Collaborative Communication for Effective School-Parent Partnerships with Dr. Rob Kiter, CIRC Program Coordinator, September 24th, 2025. CIRC's Wisdom Wednesday webinar series.
So again, today's webinar is entitled Collaborative Communication for Effective School-Parent Partnerships. First of all, I want to give you a little bit of info about CIRC. I won't say Special Education Resolution Center too many times. I get tongue-tied, so I'll call it CIRC. But we are a third-party neutral organization helping parents and schools resolve disputes at the earliest stage possible. That's our mission. We serve in partnership with the State Department of Education and the Oklahoma State University Department of Wellness, and sponsored programs is our lead agency. Something that we mention so many times because it can be so confusing, but we're not an advocate for families or schools per se, but we work with both in supporting the IEP team process. And real important to know, everything that we do is at no cost to families or schools. So the purpose of CIRC, again, to help families and schools resolve disputes at the earliest stage possible. And we really have two sides to that mission. The first side is stakeholder training. And then the second side is the services that we provide. So just a little bit about these. We provide a one-day facilitation training to school district personnel. If you are involved in facilitating any kind of meeting, this training can help you develop skills, learn strategies, and get tools for facilitating meetings and also for engaging in conflict during difficult meetings. That is a one-day training that rotates between Tulsa at our office and in Oklahoma City. So that's something you might want to consider. We also offer to school districts crucial conversations for mastering dialogue. That's a internationally trademarked training that we provide. That's a 2-day training. Also in Tulsa 1 month, Oklahoma City the next month. But that can really help you in your one-on-one interactions with others, maybe in the school context, maybe with parents. But that training is also available. And by the way, these trainings and the other things that are listed on this left side, they're all on our stakeholder training page, which is one of the pages on the CIRC site. And if you don't know it, it's okcirc.org. That's our website. So those are our two major trainings that happen, monthly. They're regional trainings. We also do trainings on communication and managing high conflict people. Obviously, specialized monthly webinars. That's what you're in today, the Wisdom Wednesday webinars. I do want to mention, I mentioned earlier that we will be recording this because we have a lot of folks that can't be here from the 12 to 1:30 time live. But all of our webinars that we've been doing since 2021 are on the Wisdom Wednesday page, and there's a link to the archive webinars. And you'll really want to check that out because there are some great webinars there. So, maybe you can't make one or you couldn't make one, but they're all there for you. Other trainings that we provide for building capacity at the district level. And once again, all of our trainings are at no cost to training participants, and they're all listed on our stakeholder training page. The other side of the mission is the services that we provide. First of all, consultation, individual debriefs. That's a really big one right there. Alyssa Hullaby, our program manager, is here with us as a panelist today, and she takes a lot of calls. We have parents that call our office, school district personnel call, and maybe let us know a little bit about their situation and what's going on. We can't advise you or tell you this is what you should do, but what we definitely can help you better understand what are your options, what might be the best available service for you. So if we can help you in any way with that, please reach out to our office. And then when we actually provide services, the first one is IEP facilitation. IEP facilitation isn't required under IDEA, but it's an early intervention. and part of our mission in helping families and schools resolve disputes at the earliest stage possible. So maybe if your IEP, if you're having meetings that are conflicted, maybe having difficult discussions where it's hard to share or hard to listen to each other, we might, if the school and the parent both agree, we could send a facilitator to help you. And the facilitator would be there to assist the team as needed in having the best conversation possible. The next service is mediation, which is required as a dispute resolution service under IDEA. And that's really where there's a clear dispute regarding one issue or a number of issues between the school and the parents. And again, either school or parent can request this. Both have to agree. But if you do, we can send a mediator at no cost and to help you try to work through that conflict. And basically, the mediator will help you discuss the issues, negotiate with each other, and explore to find solutions that can hopefully help you resolve the dispute. The end goal is a written agreement that reflects those agreements that were reached. And that agreement, once signed by the parties, is enforceable in any state court of competent jurisdiction and in district court. So mediation is a service that we provide. One more that's listed here, facilitated resolution session as part of a due process request. So if due process is filed by either party, under IDEA, there's a 15-day period in which the parties are to meet and have a resolution session and basically try to work out the dispute before it goes on to hearing. We offer parties that are involved in a due process dispute, we offer to send a facilitator to help them with that resolution session. Really is very much like mediation with a few differences. But these are the services that we provide. And just like I mentioned, all of the training information is on that stakeholder training page. All of the information, a lot of helpful information about our services is on the website. There's a page for mediation, a page for IEP facilitation, page for due process with great materials about each of those. So you could take a look at those or call our office if you have any questions. Once again, we don't serve as advocates for families or schools, but we are basically an advocate for the process of helping you work together. All of our services are free. So just giving you a little bit of context about who we are. Okay.
Rob,
yes.
mind if I jump in real quick? Even on the, part of so much of what Alyssa does on those consults and debriefs with people, a lot of times they might not end up in a service with us at all. There's, talking with someone at our office through some things. A lot of times, even just the phone call can clear up some miscommunication, some questions schools or parents might have, and they might not move forward with a service. The nice thing is that having that phone call, Alyssa or I, if she's unavailable, can always, talk to the parties about like what's in the policy and procedure handbook for the State Department, or even just say, hey, do you want me to call the director if a parent's calling? And sometimes that clears up miscommunication just by that way in an informal thing. So I wanted to make sure people understood that like giving us a call also doesn't obligate you to a service in any way, shape, or form. And so I think that is nice too. And Alyssa spends a lot of time talking people through those things, and the route that they take may not be a service, or it may be one. And so that's a nice thing too, I think.
Well, thanks for clarifying that. That's a really, really important point. We'd love to help you maybe be able to work things out without even needing a service.
Yeah.
But we're definitely here to help you. So today's training, essential elements in the foundation of a collaborative partnership. So if you look at the slide on the left, you see a team engaging and beginning to work together. If you look at the slide on the right, you might think, what in the world is this? Well, that house is really the metaphor and the picture that I have in my mind and that I had in developing this training, because what we're really going to be talking about is building the collaborative house or collaborative partnership between families and schools. And what we're going to focus on in this webinar is laying the foundation building a strong foundation for a collaborative house. And we're going to look at two ingredients that are paramount to be included in the foundation: mutual respect and trust. So mutual respect, you see the foundation in the picture there. That's the base. That's the base of a strong collaborative house. Just a few things to think about. Mutual respect is unseen. Just like the foundation in your house, once the house is there, you don't see the foundation. Mutual respect is unseen, but everything is built upon it, and nothing stands for long without it. And that's not just true for a literal house. That would be true, think about it, in an IEP team meeting context. When mutual respect is there, that helps things go very well. Mutual respect isn't there, it's going to be, a really difficult situation. So it's vital, even though it's unseen. This quote in the middle is from the original material from Crucial Conversations, and I love this. Mutual respect is like air. When it's there, you don't even notice it. You just live, right? But when there's no air, or the air quality is bad, it's the only thing on your mind. I see that so much when I would think about an IEP team meeting. What's the quality of the air in the room? Is there enough air to breathe? Is the air quality good? If it is, you don't even think about it, right? You just move on and you get things done. But if that air isn't there, if it's been sucked out of the room, or if the quality is bad, then it's kind of impacting everything in every discussion that's taking place. What is mutual respect? I'm really just saying it's where you believe I care about and value you as a person, and I believe the same thing about you, that you care about, and you value me as a person. That's really what mutual respect is about. Now, so let's break that down. In the IEP team context, it means that I believe you value me as a team member, and I feel the same way toward you. I value your participation, your ideas, your contributions. I value you, and as a result, and this is the hope, you feel welcome and included. I really think, and we're going to look at this a lot deeper, but I think that looking at things this way, it might be the beginning of seeing meaningful participation as a relational reality instead of simply being an IDEA requirement. And so what I mean there, and I don't have this on the slide, but we all know that under IDEA, parents are to be afforded meaningful participation as a valued member of the IEP team. Well, what does that really mean? And so what I would suggest is, I've been looking at it like there are two lenses through which we can view meaningful participation. The first lens is what I'm simply going to call a compliance lens. And these are both, by the way, good lenses. But the compliance lens, when we're looking at meaningful participation through that, let's say the school team is looking at this issue, wanting to provide meaningful participation through the compliance lens, then what you would maybe think about is, I want to make sure the parent is invited to the meeting. They know when and where it is. They have a literal seat at the table, and they're allowed to speak. And all of those things are good, right? But what I want to encourage you to think about is, that's a good start, but you may not want to stop there. So there's another lens that you could look through that I think maybe lets you see a lot farther and deeper. And that's what I would call a relational lens. And if you look at meaningful participation through a relational lens, then you would also be asking, not just making sure that the parent is invited to the meeting, they have a seat at the table, and that they're allowed to speak, but you would really work hard to make sure that the parent feels valued and welcomed on that team and in that meeting. And along with that, you would work really hard to try to help the parent feel like they've been heard. And I say feel because it's very subjective, but you would really want the parent to feel like they've been heard and their ideas and thoughts are being given serious consideration. That's a lot more than in being invited to the meeting, having a seat at the table, and being allowed to speak. And to take that one step further in terms of wanting them to feel like they've been heard, it might also involve, for instance, if the team were to disagree with a parent, does the team just say no? Or would the team take the time, and this might really take some time, to help the parent understand the reasoning behind their conclusions? That is another whole level in terms of, I see Allison shaking her head. She probably has something to say. But I actually want to bring you in on this, Allison, because there's one more thing I thought about this, and that is, I think it's something that sometimes gets a little misunderstood. Um, Meaningful participation, that's why when I talk about meaningful participation with people, and I do talk with parents about it sometimes in an IEP context and with schools, I'm really talking about feeling like you've been heard, and that your ideas are being seriously considered and deliberated on by the team. But I also now have to add to that meaningful participation doesn't necessarily mean the school team will agree with what the parents' ideas and proposals are. And I think that's important. So agreeing isn't required to equal meaningful participation. But having been heard, your ideas being valued and seriously considered and deliberated on, I think that might. And so once again, I think sometimes that might be a little confusing, because I've met some parents that might feel like, unless the school team agrees with me, I don't have meaningful participation. So something to think about.
And Rob, yeah, I think you're right. And we hear that a lot. Even, and Alyssa can jump in here too if she wants to, in terms of the phone calls for either. There might be some parents who really don't know that they're afforded meaningful participation at all and have constantly felt like, well, the school just makes decisions. I don't ask questions, and maybe now I'm bothered, right? Or the parents that might know and have done some research or knew that they're afforded that under the law, um, assume that it might means, well, now the school has to do everything I'm asking for that I think is appropriate, and I get to direct all the things about my kiddo at the school. And you're right that the school is the one who has that obligation to ensure that the education is appropriate, right? To provide that free and appropriate public education. And I think you hit the nail on the head when you mentioned about real consideration. And if for some reason the school doesn't agree, or if the data doesn't support it, that would be really the rationale as to why the school team members might not agree with a parent's suggestion, request, thought on how to address something with their child. I think there's oftentimes that lack of taking the time to explain why. Here's why we can't move forward on this. Or we talk about this in other trainings too, really getting to the root of the issue, because a lot of times when the parents come with their participation, they will come with a request for a specific thing, a specific service, accommodation, supplemental aid. And the school team might not understand the rationale behind that, right? That request and what problem it's trying to solve. And so they get stuck in kind of this, I hate to say battle, but it can feel like that, right? Of, oh no, that's not the support you need. But they might be really seeing the same need for the child, but have a different way to meet that need. And that conversation really can break down, like you said, if the school doesn't agree with the request and they don't get deeper into the why, and here's what the data, and here's the problem we're trying to address, or the issue. And I think that gets really tough, because then the parents feel shut down and they felt like, well, I made this request, I'm supposed to be able to participate. And that is hard. And I think schools need to it's okay to say things like, here's our obligation and here's the data we have. Help us move forward. And Alyssa, I don't know if you have other context in terms of some of the calls and other things you've been dealing with that even don't go to a service.
No, you guys are just killing it. But one thing that I do want to add is that sometimes schools may not have data to say no to a parent request, and it's okay to also tell the parent, "Hey, we don't have the data to support that request right now. Let us get some. Let us
Mhm.
use some time to gather this data, and then let's meet again and talk about it." And that can go a long way in smoothing things over or, allowing that parent to participate. So.
That's a good point too. I think that team members can sometimes say yes or say no to something without the data just based upon what's happening in the conversation. And that you're right, it is okay. And it goes further to, again, show that you're respecting and considering their request. And it can show, again, show that parent, hey, we hear you.
Yeah.
And let us get the information so that we can appropriately respond and see if this is something that your child needs or whatever the case may be. I think that's a good point too, Melissa.
Yeah, thank you both for sharing those things. I think that if we do the things that you're talking about, um, there's maybe a greater chance that even if we end up disagreeing, we can disagree more agreeably.
Yeah.
And
Have an understanding together of
have,
maybe
have an
why.
understanding,
Yeah.
right? And
Yeah.
without having to demonize the other or having to feel like we were just shut down, but a greater understanding. So this is really good. But I think looking at meaningful participation through that relational lens as well as the compliance lens might
Yes.
be really helpful to build mutual respect.
Agreed. And those conversations are what gets you there. Even if you're talking about data for compliance,
Right.
it's conversation to show that you're respectful and to be able to move forward like that. I think that's
Yeah.
perfect.
And those conversations, and we'll actually talk about this a little bit later, but the thing about them is they take time, right? You can't just push through to the next thing on the agenda and roll over. They take time, but they're worth it. I wanted to show you one other thing here before we actually get into a little bit more about mutual respect and trust. This model that I have in front of you, 3 aspects of participant satisfaction. I think this could be helpful to school team members, parents, all IEP team members, because when you think about it, when you leave any kind of meeting, and just put yourself in this place, when you leave a meeting that you're part of, and let's say it's an IEP team meeting, you basically come out of that meeting with a sense of whether how good of an experience was that, or was that a bad experience? Basically, all participants that engage in meetings are going to come out of that meeting rating it on some kind of a level in terms of their satisfaction. Instead of looking at satisfaction by participants as a one size fits all thing, I'm looking at it through 3 dimensions. And I think this could really help you. The substantive satisfaction, procedural satisfaction, and relationship satisfaction. And this, again, is all participants. Something that parents can think about, but also school teams can really think about with your IEP meeting. So let's break them down. The first one is substantive. The substantive dimension basically answers this question. Did we accomplish what we set out to accomplish? Whatever the meeting was. I mean, it could be a school staff meeting, but it could be an IEP meeting. Did we get the job done that we were there to do? And it's not just one answer, because let's think about it. If it's an annual IEP, then it would be, did we finish the IEP? If it was a meeting to look at testing, to look at data and see how that might impact supports and services for the students and deliberate on that, did we do that? If the meeting was to address parent concerns, were those concerns addressed? And basically the idea here is, and this is dimension number 1, if we can answer yes to that. And by the way, this is where an agenda can really come in handy, because the agenda for any meeting should reflect what the job is that we're there to do, what the objectives are. If we can answer yes, we got that job done, then on some level, you're going to leave feeling good about that. On the other hand, if you didn't accomplish what you were there to do, you're really probably not going to feel that great about that meeting. So that's the first dimension, but it's not the only one. The second dimension is procedural, and that answers, did the process by which we met our substantive objectives, did that meet our shared expectations? This is a big one right here. And this one ties right into that discussion that we all just had about meaningful participation. So let's say we got the job done. Let's say we finished the annual IP. Let's say that we were able to discuss the data and deliberate, or we did address the parents' concerns. The question isn't what we accomplished. The question is, how did we accomplish it? What was the process like in that meeting in order to get to that end goal? I mean, I think the real issue here, if you think about it, is, again, schools may really be looking at this through a compliance lens, which I can totally understand, and they need to. Did they do the things that they're required to do in an IEP meeting? But through the relational lens, if you look at this dimension, then it's more like, were all of the people able to be engaged in the meeting, or were there just a handful of people that monopolized the conversation? Did we in this meeting and how we work together as a team, did we meet our shared expectations? And we're going to talk more about shared expectations in a minute. But that's really important. And so it's not just did we get the job done, it's how did we work together to get the job done. Some people might leave a meeting and feel like just because they got the job done and they checked off some boxes, everything was great and they're satisfied. Somebody else may leave the meeting and feel like, yeah, maybe we got the job done, but I don't like the way we worked together. So this is procedural. And by the way, all three of these elements, these dimensions, they really impact each other. They kind of roll over, cross over. But the last one is relationship, the relationship dimension. And you can really see how the procedural one will impact this, because the question is, what is the quality of our relationship with the other participants after having worked together today in this meeting? So, bottom line is, do we feel like that this, not just what we accomplished, but the way we work together, do we feel like this improved our relationship? Did this help to build trust? Did this help us want to work together and collaborate? Or do we feel like trust was lost and social capital was spent on this meeting? And we really don't like or trust people as much as we maybe did before. So this relationship one is really, really big. And I tell you, at CERC, and this is something I think that school teams could think about and do on a local level. But when we have a facilitator go to an IEP meeting to facilitate that meeting, we're going to, after the meeting's over, we're going to ask the school and the parent to fill out a very brief online evaluation. And one of the most important questions that we're looking to see the answer to is, do you feel like this process, basically in this meeting, helped? How did it impact the relationship? And we give them three options and we ask them to explain it even a little bit more. But basically, did it really have relatively no impact? The relationship's the same. Did it improve, possibly strengthen the relationship between the family and the school, the team, or did it hurt the relationship? And we really want, and that's totally subjective, but we want to know how they felt. And so when you look at these three dimensions, you can see how they may all have been involved in the way people are responding to that question. But I just think my suggestion would be, like as a school district or IEP teams, you could actually think about these same three dimensions, and you might even informally or formally have some kind of a survey as to how team members felt like, what the meeting did, what the process did, how it impacted the relationship. Now, I'd be interested, I don't know if there are any questions, but Allison and Alyssa, you all probably have some thoughts with this again, looking at these three different dimensions.
Oh, yeah. I think you're right. There is such a compliance and procedural aspect, and with the federal laws and the state policies and procedures and timelines and all of that, and schools get wrapped up in that. And I get it. Like,
Yeah, I
this
do
is
too.
not me saying that's a wrong thing, but they get wrapped up in that and like, okay, now we've got to have the IEP meeting on this date and we've got to get through these things. That the relationship component can get forgotten, or not focused on during that time, and the understanding that the conversations during those meetings have such an impact on how to move forward. And like you said, at CERC, a lot of what we're dealing with isn't necessarily always a procedural thing, or there might be when there's conflict, or there might be some procedural type stuff involved in the issue, but so much of it is centered around the relationship between school team members and the parents. And I think it gets difficult if there's not been a relationship prior to an IEP meeting, for instance, if that's kind of the first time you're trying to build it. But I love the thought of this, thinking of through all of these things. So how can we still, right, meet our obligations
Right.
for ensuring that we've got great data on this kid, and we're working towards good goals and the services are appropriate, and getting through the obligations to address the parents' concerns and through that meeting, while also making sure that we are building, rebuilding, and working on that relationship, because it takes you so far. Like you said, the whole metaphor of this being the base of everything, right? That mutual respect and trust and all of that you're getting to. Um, it's very difficult to move forward if that's
Yeah.
not there or been harmed. And I don't know if Alyssa has other thoughts on this whole thing about thinking of it through this lens.
I do have one, and not necessarily that there's been any conflict, but something that could bring conflict is that substantive piece. Um, if parents aren't understanding and then they don't speak up and say, "Hey, I don't understand this," that could impact your the relationship piece, which is going to impact your procedural piece. And so ensuring that schools slow down enough and use that parent-friendly language that they are allowing those parents, to understand or to, just making sure that the parents are able to participate, if that makes sense. So,
I think that's huge
Yeah,
because,
that,
as you know, we get calls a lot of times where maybe now there's an issue, but for years, maybe the parent didn't speak up because they didn't feel comfortable enough, they didn't have enough background knowledge to say something. Lots of reasons, right? But setting the stage for them to, and making sure that the parents know, and that parents, if they do have questions, that they should ask them. They
yeah,
are a member of that team, and like Rob stated earlier, I mean, the law affords for meaningful participation, but they're also an expert on their child. And that's so important. That's a good point, Alyssa.
really, really is. Thank you both. Let me just kind of go ahead on these slides where I was, but okay, let's continue on. Think about mutual respect here. Yeah. The power of listening. Listening is one of the greatest ways that we can convey that respect to others. If you want to know, how do I do that? How could I help them? Well, listening. And I want to define this. I'm not talking about listening to come up with an answer. And we got to all be honest, that is human nature. That's almost like passive listening. I think about it because we just listen and our mind immediately goes to the answer that we want to respond or react with. And it's also not listening to build our argument, which is also easy to do. We listen to get the things we need to kind of build our argument so we can prove we're right. I'm really talking about listening. This word has already come up a number of times in this presentation for a reason. Listening to understand what the other person, the other team member is saying and where they're coming from. listening for understanding. It's often called active listening. In the facilitation training and in crucial conversations also, we spend a lot more time really developing that skill of active listening. But that's what we're talking about here. When we listen for understanding, and that's our real motivation there, to build understanding, not just our understanding, but the other's understanding, we are listening non-defensively. Very important. It's non-defensive listening. And then the big takeaway here, without going into the skill in this presentation, is that when others can see that we're really listening and paying attention to them, it shows them that we care and it demonstrates empathy. So when we go back to that thing about parents feeling like they've been heard and their ideas are being serious consideration, what helps them feel that way? Our truly listening, really listening for understanding. And I think a key word in that bottom sentence, when others can see that we're really listening, that word's important instead of when others can hear. And the reason it's important is that it's not just what we say, it's our tone of voice and it's our body language. And when people, whoever it is, can see, it might be a school team member, watching the parent as the parent's listening to them. It's not just one side, but when people can see that the other person is really listening and paying attention, wanting to understand, maybe even by the questions they ask, I don't get that. Can you help me understand? When they see that, it conveys that we care and it demonstrates empathy. So it's just a huge thing when it comes to building mutual respect. Now, be honest, sometimes it's really difficult to listen. And some people are really difficult to listen to for each of us. So I just mentioned here, it could go a lot longer than this, but 4 things that might make it hard for you to listen. Number 1 is when you think you've heard it all before and you think that you know what's coming. And the reason you do is because it's come over and over and over and over. You've heard it all before. And that can cause us very easily to check out and not really pay attention. And we might miss something really important that we hadn't heard before. But I could definitely say I've done this, when I feel like, I know what they're going to say because I've heard it 100 times. That could make it hard for you to listen. Very practical for school districts, I think, especially for teachers and administrators, when you feel rushed and you don't have enough time to listen. You've just run in from the past meeting and you're getting ready to run to the next meeting. You feel rushed, or even when you're in the meeting, you're trying to get through everything and you feel rushed. And is there time? There's not enough time to listen. We've got to get to the next thing in the agenda. That's very real. So I want to just start off by acknowledging that's real, but that really hinders us, because the truth is it's going to be by taking a little bit more time to listen for understanding, we can solve so many problems and avoid so many heartaches later by doing that. So it's kind of like, it seems almost counterintuitive. I don't have enough time to listen, but the truth is you don't have enough time not to listen. That's really the truth about that. Okay, another thing that I think ties right into this is when you're tired and you don't have the energy needed. I could add also to this when you're sick, when you're not feeling well. Very difficult to actively listen, to really listen for understanding. And I think this is really a huge one. I can tell you as a mediator, when I'm getting ready to go do a mediation, I always try to really allow some time prior to that mediation to clear my mind, to just kind of center myself so that I can not only be physically present, but emotionally present. And the reason and that means also kind of clearing away some away from the table issues that are probably on my mind and in my thoughts, so that I can really be there. And I would just tell you the reason this is so important is, we've got to be honest, listening for understanding the way I'm talking about, it really requires a lot of energy. It's a lot easier to just kind of passively listen instead of actively listen. It takes a lot of energy. And then the last one I just mentioned is when you really don't like someone or you don't trust them. Wow, that's very hard to listen. It's something called reactive devaluation. When we don't like or don't trust people, we react in a way to what they're saying. We react instantly without even thinking about it to devalue whatever they said and maybe even them. And the reason we do it is because we don't like them or we don't trust them. It makes it really hard to hear things that could actually lead to common ground and things that could actually lead to solutions and help us move forward. It's really hard to pick up on those things, even when they're being said, when we don't like or trust others. So these are some things that can make it hard for us to listen. It's why sometimes in some meetings, I've actually taken a little bit of time to talk with the team about the difference between listening to someone when you're seeing them as an ally, really they're on the team with you, versus listening when you're seeing them as an adversary. And that's really what I was saying a minute ago. When you view someone as they're the enemy, you know, they're on their side and I'm on my side, they're the adversary. It's very hard to pick up on anything good there in the conversation, even though it may actually be present. You may be saying exactly what I need to hear and what I could totally agree with, but because you're saying it and I can't stand you or don't trust you, I don't pick up on it. So it, you know, maybe some of that is shifting and you know, creating a different story about whoever we're listening to so that they can become more of an ally to us instead of an adversary. And I just would say, don't let these things keep you from really trying to listen for understanding. It does take a lot of energy. It does take time, but I think the benefits are worth that.
Hey, Rob,
Yeah.
I think what it's also sort of this cyclical thing that happens, right? Is that if you don't take that extra, even just a couple minutes of extra time to have the explanation when you're engaging between the school and the parent talking about the child, right? And you get to a point where maybe that trust has been broken or it hasn't been really built up enough. And so you're not going to hear them. It's just this sort of vicious cycle thing. And that makes things really, really hard. And like you said, it gets to where then people start seeing each other as like your side, my side.
Right.
And you're all there for the good of that one student in that, at least in that meeting, right? And moving forward. And so it becomes this cycle that you've got to be able to pull yourself out of somehow, even if that just means trying to reframe internally and what that should look like. And do you have thoughts, Rob, just with all of your experience, you know, doing facilitations and mediations and working with people through this type of thing on how do they reframe that? Or you might be getting there, but how they reframe that mindset if they've gotten in this negative cycle.
Mm-hmm. I'll say a little bit more about it when we talk about sometimes the need for what I'm calling an IEP team relationship reset.
Mm-hmm.
There's some things I think that we could actually do, some strategies that we could use. And I'll talk more about that because I think it's not an easy process. It takes time. And I'll mention a little bit more of it later on, but then also I'm going to refer everyone to the webinar that I did on that takes a lot more time to break down some of those things. Because what you're really talking about is different things that you do to help you create a different story about that person, or maybe the school team, or maybe the parent. You know, because like as you know, in Crucial Conversations, we learned that our stories that we automatically create, and you were talking about that cyclical thing. That's what's even further developing the story. Our stories create emotions and we act on them. And what we're really talking about is doing some things, and it may take a number of things to change those stories from seeing others as adversaries to seeing them more as allies. And So
Okay.
I don't want to jump into it too much because I'll never get through the other thing if you get me off into this.
Sorry.
Let's see. No, let's see where we are a little bit later on, because I think it really what you're talking about is really important. Okay. We're not going to do this in the webinar here, but this is an activity. You'll have the PDF or the PowerPoint of this in the archive in a few weeks. And so when you're thinking about this later on, think about a person who is hard for you to listen to, maybe from one of those reasons that we just looked at, maybe for a different reason, but whatever that is, make the choice to really listen with this person. Whereas maybe that's been difficult, make the choice to really endeavor to listen for understanding and watch how that would change your interactions just by your listening, not even speaking. So that's just a little activity that you could follow on later. Okay, few positive consequences of building mutual respect. First of all, I think mutual respect provides, and I think Allison, you may have mentioned this earlier, but it provides a cushion to fall back on when conversations get rough and we might fall. Any team, you're going to have some difficult conversations. But when you have mutual respect in place, it's like you fall back on a cushion instead of landing on your head. And the reason, I think, is the second thing. Having mutual respect in place makes it easier to give others the benefit of the doubt. I can be more willing and able to let a negative comment slide instead of holding on to it and letting it build resentment. And I've been in many meetings over the years, and I've heard comments from school team members, and I've heard comments from parents, not one or the other, that have been, let me say, negative and could be hurtful. And I'm not speaking about it lightly, but I'm saying this. I've watched this. When those kinds of comments had been made on a team with an environment that has mutual respect, it really made a difference in the ability of the person that the comment was made toward to be able to gracefully move on and the team to move on, versus when those kinds of comments were made and that mutual respect was not there, they really land much harder. Does that make sense to you, Allison? I see you. This is a benefit. Okay. The negative consequences, really just the other side, but worth thinking about. Without mutual respect, it's more difficult to give others the benefit of the doubt. You're always going to perceive, oh, they must be intending this, when that's not necessarily the case. But why are you doing it? Because you don't feel like you're respected or valued. And without mutual respect, it's easy to demonize rather than humanize others, and the relationship suffers. And I won't stay here because of our time, but we live in a culture right now that is so polarized, and where people so quickly will demonize others, those that they disagree with. And we have to learn how to humanize others if we really are going to be able to work together, having that same common interest of the student. It's just worth really thinking about these things. Okay, let's go on to trust. Mutual respect is the base. Trust is the concrete that we fill into the foundation. Trust is an essential component of any successful collaborative partnership, not just an IEP team, a relationship with a significant other, marriage, friendship. I mean, you think about partnerships where people work together, you got to have trust. And I'm not going to go long here, but just say that I've seen over the years that when there was trust in the foundation, in an IEP team, trust of the school toward the parents, trust by the parents toward the school team, there's been a real difference there, even in the sense that, and I think I'm going to mention this later, but I'll go ahead and jump into it right here. Even when someone, maybe the school team, is asking the parent to consider something that they really don't like, it's not what they prefer, or the parent is asking, and seen this many times, asking the school to consider something regarding the student's education that the school team really, doesn't want to go that direction. When trust was present, I've seen that make a difference in the person that's being asked maybe to give a little bit, in their willingness to go ahead and do that, to try something for a while, to do something without not doing what's appropriate for the student. There are concessions, there are different solutions that teams can find. And I've seen a willingness to sometimes go ahead and accept something that isn't really exactly what someone would want, simply because the trust level's there. Okay, kind of goes back to the giving the benefit of the doubt again. All right, we start off by giving others our trust. It's just a gift. But after you do that, trust has to be built over time. And that's where we earn the trust of others, right? And in an IP context, it's going to be in the way we work together. It's going to be by our meeting, our shared expectation. The truth is, trust takes a long time to build. And this is the sad truth, to be honest with you. Trust takes a long time to build, and we're going to work hard to build it, but it can be destroyed in a minute. So it's so very important. And that has to be, rebuilt, and that takes time. So I want to just briefly look at this relationship between building trust and expectations. So I think on one level, trust can be the result of having agreed upon or shared expectations. And here's the key: that are implemented consistently. And I actually left out two words: over time. So the idea here is, we have to have the same expectations, shared expectations in common. And then these when we have them, the school team and the parents, and we actually implement those, the things that were expected of us and of the other, we implement them, and we do it not every 5 times, but we do it consistently. We're not perfect, but really we're pretty consistent, and we do it over time, because remember the time factor that it takes. When we do that, we build trust. So something just to mention real quickly here about expectations is we all have expectations, even if they're not written and even if they're not spoken. That's real important to think about. Every member of that IEP team, the school personnel, the parent, and someone they're bringing, maybe an advocate with them. But the point is, we all have expectations of what should be taking place. And we don't always speak those expectations and voice them, but we still have them. And we all know that when our expectations are unfulfilled, what happens? Are you okay with that? Are you good? No, we get frustrated. We get angry. And that's what happens. So we really want to work hard on making sure, and it goes right back to what Allison was talking about, taking enough time in our conversation even to clarify what our expectations are to start with, so that we really can be on the same page. And then we're going to work hard to implement those expectations that we have together. So let me give you 5 quick examples that I think could tie into IP team meetings. The first one might be, and these are things the school team can do to help build trust with the parent: giving the parent a copy of the IP draft in advance of the meeting, and letting them know that outcomes are not predetermined and all decisions are going to be made by the team. But this is to help you prepare for what we're going to be looking at. I think that would be an incredible shared expectation. If at all possible, it would be worth doing. I've been in a number of meetings where that has taken place, and it really has made a difference. Don't forget, if you're the school team personnel, the things in that IEP are common to you. You talk about them all the time, every day. You've learned about them. You know those abbreviations back and forth. For the parent, they don't have that knowledge base. Even though they're the expert regarding their child, they're not necessarily the expert regarding special education process and language and such. So taking the time, I've been to meetings where they were given that in advance, and it really helped the parent. And then basically they were able to circle some things that they had questions about when they knew they'd get to that. And then I've been to meetings where that document is dropped in front of them at the beginning of the meeting. And I'm thinking, I've been a facilitator with CERC for 11 years now, but I wouldn't be able to understand it if it were dropped right in front of me that minute. So that some thinking about that, and once again, how that might really help the parent feel valued, I think that could be helpful. Distributing an agenda for the meeting to help the team stay on track. That could also be really helpful, especially if that agenda kind of highlighted, these are the objectives, for our meeting, not necessarily everything in the IEP, but this is what we really want to hit. That can help the team stay on track.
Rob, can I jump in real quick?
Yeah.
About the agenda.
Yeah.
I think I want to echo your point of it doesn't have to be huge. First of all, it can just say, we're going to hit some assessments. We've got this much time today. And I know you're going to hit a little bit of that too, but then we're going to talk about goals. But when schools, particularly if you're in a situation where you're first trying to build trust or you're having to rebuild it, it might be really an opportunity to do this. But asking parents prior, hey, we're working on the agenda for the meeting. Is there anything in particular you'd like to discuss or add? And getting that input prior to again, doesn't have to take long, just shooting an email. And I think sometimes when we talk about things like this for schools and parents to consider, because a parent could also reach out. Hey, I know we have an IEP team meeting coming up. I want to make sure we address these things. These are some concerns I have that I want to discuss, and I wanted to give you, the school, the heads up on these things. That helps from the flip side too. And it doesn't take long. I think like you said, this stuff takes time, but it's better to give the little bit of time on the front end instead of having to give the lots of time if you're having to rebuild a broken relationship, right?
Right.
It's worth it. So I think that's important too, that schools could reach out to parents, and parents should feel free to say, I know we've got this meeting coming up. I'd like to discuss these things. And then everybody's got that kind of shared expectation of what should be happening during their time together.
Yeah, very helpful. And kind of to what you were saying about spending the little bit of time to save a lot of time. When I was a kid, and I don't know if it's really common anymore, but we would hear an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure.
Yes.
That's really what a number of these expectations, I think, really represent. The ounce of prevention. Okay, a couple more. Consider the time frame for the meeting. Making sure adequate time is allowed for discussion. So there's two parts to that I want to briefly mention. One is when I go to a meeting as a facilitator from CERC, I will always ask whoever the person is that's leading the meeting from the school team. I'll ask them, is there a time frame for this meeting? I know the meeting starts at 10, but is there an expected time frame for the length of the meeting? And if they say, yeah, it's 2 hours, then when I start things off and I'm setting the tone, I'll say to the team before I turn it over to the school, my understanding is we have 2 hours together. And, we'll try to stay on track in that 2 hours and keep mindful of it in terms of what you really need to accomplish today. That's one thing that I think might be very helpful for schools to consider, having a time frame, because once again, think of this. Even though you may not say anything about it, expectations are there, whether they're verbalized or written or not. For instance, the school team looking at a meeting may be thinking, well, we have an hour and a half and we've got to go somewhere else. We have an hour and a half to get this done. And the parent may be thinking, we're going to be here as long as it takes to get this done. Or it could be just the opposite. But the point is, people are going to be frustrated. You're not helping yourself in terms of building trust if you aren't on the same page from the very beginning about how long we're going to be here. Something to consider. The other thing is, whatever that time frame is that you set, back to what Allison was saying a little bit ago, that a little bit spent saves a lot. Make sure that there is adequate time to do what you need to do. And if you're going to be having a discussion about parents' concerns or whatever it is, you just want to make sure that you have time to actually accomplish that. I think that could help.
Rob, one of the attendees shared in the Q&A that they used an agenda in a meeting recently as a new special ed director, and they actually received a positive email from the parents the very next day. So it's sort of like cementing what you're saying, that this agenda, it looked like, she was prepared and this was her intent and that's what was met. And it really does help. Thank you, by the way, Amy.
Thank you. Thank you. That's wonderful to hear. Okay, let me go on just a couple more here. Sometimes I think it might be helpful, back to expectations, to clarify what the communication plan is going to look like between the family and the school, especially when there's been a communication breakdown and expectations are already, unmet and people are frustrated. It might be helpful to kind of take a little bit of time to figure out. And I like to look at it as who, what, when, and how. Who will be the contact person at the school for the parent? And if there are two parents, who will be the main parent that would want to be involved in communication regularly? But who? And when you think about that, like from a school side, I would look at it not just in terms of titles, but who might have the best relationship, or the best interaction with the parent, but determine who's that contact going to be. Number two, what will you be communicating about? Besides, obviously, if there was an emergency or a real problem that happened, other than that, what kinds of things should you expect in your communicating back and forth? Number three, real important, when, or really how often? Again, except for emergencies, are we expecting maybe once a week that we'd hear? And also, like, sometimes I've been in meetings where at the end of the meeting, they kind of worked out this communication plan because they really were struggling, and they decided, okay, the special ed director is going to be the point of contact. We're going to be talking about regular progress in addition to, if there were issues, but we're going to be talking about that weekly. And that communication will take place by the end of the school day on Friday. So it was really clear. And then the last one, very important. What's the best means of communication? Find out. Ask the parent. Ask the school. Is it phone? Is it email? Is it text? Don't assume that you know what the best one is, but ask. Take a little bit of time to do this, but this could make a huge difference in communication. Because this is really all about the last one. Really, it's partly about this because it's about what's going to be taking place between meetings. I mean, you only meet so often. So the last thing, as far as expectations, look for opportunities to build relationships with and educate parents throughout the entire school year, not just at the annual IEP or in the meeting. And we could take a lot of time on that. I'm sure Allison and Alyssa have a lot of ideas on this, but I've thought about this a lot. The IEP is the main focus, one of the main focuses of IDEA. And then we focus mostly after that on the IEP team, the IEP meeting, right? That's working on the IEP. But we don't want to forget that it is an IEP team. And for it really to be a team and feel like a team, that those opportunities between meetings, the things that you do, the brief little conversations that the school and the family might have in between meetings, I think can make just a huge difference. Okay. The last thing here, be honest. Sometimes there are situations where they're really, maybe we try to do everything we can do to build mutual respect and build trust, but for whatever reason on this particular team, there really is no mutual respect and there is no trust, or very, very little. So that's where I went back to what Allison was asking earlier. That's where I think, that might call for what I'm calling an IEP team relationship reset. And it's kind of like to help the team members learn to see each other as allies instead of adversaries. It's kind of like with my computer, for the most part, I just put my computer to sleep and then I just kind of start it up again and it's not a problem. But every once in a while, things get locked up and I have to reset it or restart it. And the same thing's true with your phone. It's the same thing here. Sometimes there needs to be a reset, kind of like a factory reset with your computer or your phone, to help the members see each other as allies when they are ingrained in more of an adversarial thinking. And I just mentioned here that may involve doing some things to be able to throw out some old stuck stories or adversary stories. What do we call it in crucial conversations? I just lost it. Victim stories. The villain. Those villain stories that may need to be changed and edited, and that takes time. But that's absolutely something that can happen. And sometimes I think it might even involve apologies, forgiveness, just a gracefulness and a willingness to look past some offenses. One thing I just will mention briefly before we end this up is about apologies, because this really helped me. I think sometimes, we only think of apologies as meaning that there is an admission of guilt or wrongdoing. And that might make it really hard, let's say, for a school district to apologize if that's what's required. And if they haven't done anything wrong, then of course they're not, going to want to do that. And there might be some legal considerations there too, in terms of admission of guilt. But even if that kind of an apology, and by the way, there are times, and I've seen it happen positively in conversations, where somebody said something or did something that they really shouldn't have done. And they know it, and they do own up to it, and they truly give a full, I apologize for what I said. That was wrong. Or I apologize for what we did. That was wrong. Sometimes that can happen, but I just want to encourage you to know that even if that's not possible, there is another layer of apology that I think can be very helpful. And that might sound something like, I see where this has gone, and it never was my intention that we would digress into such a place of blaming and attacking each other. That never was our intention. Here's what we want. And you're really sharing, the good intent that you have. I'm just saying that apologies might be something needed. Forgiveness might be something needed. And I think Allison's going to put in the chat. I did a webinar a number of years ago on this, and included a number of things that we kind of broke down and looked at. And so you can, that link is to the Wisdom Wednesday page that has that video and has the presentation and such. And then the last thing I would say about it is this: sometimes some of these things that we're just kind of briefly looking at right here and that are defined in more detail on that webinar, sometimes they might work in a group setting. And sometimes they can be really helpful to be heard by everyone. But there also are times where some of these things, to rebuild mutual respect and rebuild trust and change that story from the adversary to the ally, sometimes that can be very well done separately in private conversations from someone at the school with the parent. So just think about it. There are things that might work in a school setting, in the meeting setting. There are things that might be more appropriate because you don't ever want to put someone on the spot where they feel embarrassed and they're uncomfortable to share. And that may be the case with everyone listening. Might need to be a private conversation.
Hey, Rob.
Yeah.
Doesn't look like I think I can only message the host, which is you, and the panelists. So I can't do chat to everybody, but I sent you directly the link from our website if you're able to put it in the
Okay.
chat for everyone at the end. I know you'll have to pull up other stuff at the end, but I pulled our link up and sent it to you. I just can't send it to everyone in the group.
I wonder if, and I'm really kind of down near the end, so I
Okay.
think I could do it this way. I have to kind of jump out of that. I really, the only thing that I want us to look at is just our resources. But let me go ahead. You said you put it.
I messaged it directly to you, the link from our archived
Okay.
webinar.
Let me
You
look
just
at
wanted to
that now.
copy it and put it to everybody.
Oh yeah. Okay. So now I can go to the chat and send this to everyone. And I actually have the link over here too. So let me see if I can get this in here. Is that there? Do you all see it?
It came through. Yep.
Okay.
We're able to get it to everyone. So hopefully if you guys that are here, if you don't see that or can't access that, then let me know.
Excellent. And then I just got a few community of practice resources. Obviously, we've talked about CERC. Cadre, it has wonderful resources, and we are collaborating with them, and our state is, so that you could reach out to them. And a number of their resources, by the way, are on our website, on the IEP facilitation page and other. The State Department of Education obviously can help a lot. And the Oklahoma Parent Center is the state's parent training information center they can help you as well. I don't know. Can you see this screen? Oh, I made it a lot smaller, but not in presentation view. Can everybody see this? Okay. So I want to ask you, well, first of all, Allison, are there any other, I'm just looking at the time, are there any other questions that we haven't fielded? And maybe you haven't seen them yet. If there are any that you haven't put it in there, you could put that in the chat right now. Or if there's anything else that you want to touch base on, Allison, and then I do want to just get everyone and let them know about the online survey.
I don't see any other comments or questions in our chat, and I think that you kind of covered as much as we can in our webinar time frame, and gave everybody access to the other webinar if they need the tips and tricks if they're in a situation where it needs to be a rebuild. Hopefully, people on here have a good understanding of the things that they can do in the first place. To get that through. Oh, I'm seeing on the Q&A that it looks like the file cannot be open. Can you copy and paste the link so it doesn't look like it's a file to everybody?
That
Link
was
from our website.
That actually is what I had. So let me go get
Okay.
the link again.
Okay.
Ah. Okay, let's see if we can get this. Webinars. So this should be a link to the website, to that page, and I'm going to put it in. And let's see if that does it.
There, it came through as a link. Hopefully that will work for everybody. And just so that you all know, you can always just go to our website, okcirc.org, and then you go under programs and services to the Wisdom Wednesday webinar, and there's a button that just says archive. And it has a lot of archived versions of these webinars, some of which are on a variety of topics with guest presenters and all sorts of stuff. But that should link you directly to this particular topic. Okay, perfect. Yeah, she said it works.
Excellent. Excellent. Do you want to mention next month's webinar while we're here?
Yes. Thanks, Rob. In October, I believe it's October 29th. So should be everybody would be back from fall break, whatever fall breaks school districts have right now. At that time, our October webinar will be about special education advocacy. So what it is and what it isn't, the role of special ed advocates, and just some additional information that schools and parents should be aware of, some questions they should ask when they're considering advocates, and what their able to do and not do, basically. So we're looking forward to doing that one in October and hope to see you guys there too. And as Rob shared earlier, all of these do get archived, the recording, the PDF, they're pasted on our website within a couple of weeks after the live webinar.
That's right. I'm actually trying to put that registration link in here right now. I don't know if it's going to let me do it, but the registration link for that webinar, it won't seem to take it. But so I hope, want to mention to everyone this very short online evaluation survey that you've got the QR code right in front of you. And I can make this a little bit larger if I need to, but if you would take the time to complete that, that would really be helpful to us. We're always trying to see how we can improve our trainings. And I thank you for letting me be with everyone today, and for Allison and Alyssa helping with some good dialogue here. But I just want to encourage everyone, this is the unseen part of the house. You may not notice it. Everybody sees the outside and the way it's painted and the roof and everything else, but it's of huge significance. So I encourage you to try to take the time to build mutual respect and build trust, because it can really help you have a great collaborative house, which is what we want. And if we don't have anything else, I'm going to say goodbye. Thank you for attending today, and we look forward to seeing you next month in our October webinar.